If you think your thoughts and opinions do not matter, or if you fear taking the next steps towards a better you, or if you allow other people to take free reign of your life, now is the time to put an end to these limiting beliefs. Welcome to Change Your View, a podcast that will help you take back control to have a well-lived life and the conviction that your life is to have meaning. Join Haseena Shaheed-Jackson in discussions aimed at overcoming the limitations of physical sight to see with spirit, hope, and faith. Each episode will empower you to develop the courage and self-assurance to go after the life you want. Here is your host, Haseena.
Well, welcome today for another segment of Change Your View. And I have today as my guest, Dr. Willie Gregory, and he is going to drop some nuggets and really help us to get a different perspective. And one of the things that Dr. Gregory said to me that really sparked my thought was about values and how important values are in your life. And he says the values of duty, honor, and brotherhood gave him his roots. And I'd like him to expand upon that today. What did those values really mean? And how did you come up with those three core values?
First and foremost, thank you for having me here. I'm humbled and honored to be a guest on your podcast today. Duties, honor, and brotherhood as a value that really guides and is the compass for my life. There's that old saying, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything, right? And I understand being a veteran is kind of where that word of duty comes from. We all have a job to do. And I'll talk more about that on the latter part of our discussion. But when I speak about duty, I'm speaking about what's your calling. Who are you accountable to outside of yourself? To our own selves, we can tend to make things adjust to our desires, right? But when we're held to a different standard, we have someone else looking in, someone else that we're providing for, our duties change. Our duties should be at a much higher level. And so that's what I mean by duty. Who are you accountable to, outside of yourself? In terms of values, we have to have the ability to believe in something outside of ourselves. I'll speak about myself. If I'm just locked into my line of thinking, that's a dangerous place to be. And so I have to know and really put my belief and faith and trust in things that are sound, that are core, that are true altruistic to who I am and where I come from. And for me, that's the Bible. And so, I guide my life, I live my life according to his instructions that he gives me and my interpretation of those as a imperfect being. Knowing I'm never going to get it perfect, but I also know when I'm not doing my best too. To thine own self be true. And I admit my shortcomings and I make those changes along the way, of course. And then the brotherhood piece. The brotherhood piece is we got, all of us are brothers and sisters, regardless of our color, for me, because we come from him. And so regardless of where we're at geographically or what shade we're all brothers and sisters. And that's how I like to approach life. And that's how I interact with others. And so that's what that means to me, that phrase.
That is so true. There's something I've been mulling over in my head. A scripture that I read is in Isaiah, and it talks, Matthew, sorry. I was reading Isaiah, so many different ones come to mind, but the Matthew one really sticks with me. And it says, don't fear the person who can kill the body, but instead fear the one who can do body and soul. And that's what I think is what really we grapple with, because we get so stuck up into man and being fearful of what he can do that we lose sight of the one who's able to do it all.
I love that.
And that's what you just said there really resonated with me. And one of the other things that, and we've just recently met, me and Dr. Gregory, but we immediately hit it off. I mean, he is a man on a mission, and he has a cause and a purpose. But you were raised in the city of Chicago, but you moved out because you said your surroundings really had an impact on you. So you knew that you had to get out of where you were in order to get to who you are today. Can you expand upon that? Because a lot of times we allow our environment to contain us and to set limits on who and what we can do, and you realize that and you move forward. Please elaborate on that move and what you saw and what it meant to you.
I'll call it for what it is, but sister, is I escaped. He gave me a new life, a new reason for being. I grew up on the south side of Chicago in Inglewood, and back in the '80s, late '80s, and as true to what most African American men growing up in that era on that side of town, I did what we all did, to survive and to thrive. I found myself having to make a choice. I reached that fork in the road. I can continue down that path and become a statistic and not make it 25, as a lot of us were predicted to do, and we were living up to that, unfortunately. Or I can make a different choice, and I can give myself a chance. I chose the latter, and so I went into the military. The military grew me up. It changed me. It took me to Germany, and I got a chance to see the world. I got a chance to see neighborhoods outside of Chicago. Outside of just going to Mississippi, I had never really seen anything outside of Chicago. So when I got to see Europe, and then while over there, every chance I got, I toured as much of Europe as I can. I got to see that people are people no matter where you go. And I really came to know him in terms of him creating us and us being made in his image, and how we all can relate to one another even when we can't speak the same language. A smile is a smile. I don't care what language you speak. A frown is a frown. A tear is a tear. Laughter is laughter. So I learned to speak those universal ways of communicating, and I made some friends that I still have relationships with to this day. So that's what I mean by I escaped. My eyes were open in terms of possibilities, and I had hope.
And one of the things, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, is that as we grow, we continue to evolve. A lot of people think that when you reach a certain age, that's it. However, we're still evolving even at the age that we are now. And we have to
Absolutely.
understand that. And so if you had stayed in your environment, you would have set limits on where you are today. You would have
That's an
said, oh,
excellent point.
so, and it's
Mm.
so vital that we understand that our environment might not be our physical location. Our environment could be the people that we have in our circle. And we might
It,
have to change those people out to put in people who can help lift us up. So tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing. So now that you left Chicago and you're now in Wisconsin, correct?
correct.
So how did you get started doing, and what do you do? People are asking probably, well, what is he doing? You went on to about his values and how you move, but what does Dr. Gregory do now?
I definitely will answer that in detail, but I want to come back to the importance of, us evolving as we go, as you share it, because that's a very profound point. There's also value in when things don't go well, because see, sometimes in knowing him and loving him, the answer is no, right? And so the people that I were around, that I grew up with, they gave me my base, my foundation. I got core values that are rooted in those early days of growing up on the south side of Chicago. So not
Mm.
all bad things came from there. I just want to clarify that. And you didn't imply that. I just wanted to put that out there because
Oh no.
we are what we are for a reason. And, it's not coincidence who we meet, when we meet, us meeting, and how we grow up. We all have the same experiences in one aspect or another. What separates us one from another, I believe, is what we do next. So
Correct. It's the choice,
that being,
the
it
choices
is
and
the
decisions
choices.
that you make. That is so key. The foundation is there, like you said, but that just sets the foundation. What you do with your life is based on the decisions and choices that you make. But go ahead.
Absolutely. And so, as I shared earlier, I escaped, and I call it for what it is. Because had I stayed on the south side of Chicago, I don't think I'd be here. I'm just keeping it 100. But by going to Seattle, I went to Seattle, Washington, because while in the military, I met some people from Seattle, and they were telling me how the mountains and how beautiful it was, and how there were three seasons, and they rarely got snow and all this. I mean, they made it sound so great. I just had to check it out, and I'm glad I did.
Okay.
Once I got there, it was phenomenal, and it still is phenomenal. And I'm still a Seahawk fan to this day, but that's a
Okay.
whole nother subject. I learned workforce development, getting back to who I am and what I do today. I was looking for a job. I arrived to Seattle on a Sunday. That Monday afternoon, I went into I went into the old unemployment office, and because I was an honorably discharged veteran, and I went in there seeking help, and they treated me really bad. As
Mm.
unfortunately, like a lot of people have experienced when they go into these government offices asking for help. And I felt, as someone who served our country honorably, that I was owed better treatment than that. But I wasn't discouraged. The things that I learned in the military, I learned how to survive, to improvise, adapt, and overcome. So I went around the corner, literally, to a staffing agency, interviewed with them, knocked it out, took a few tests, and then that Tuesday I started a new job, and I never looked back. As fate would
Mm.
have it, within about a year and a half to 2 years, I ended up working in that same office, as God is my witness, that treated me so horribly. And that's where I learned workforce development. And that's when I learned about all this money out here, these government programs, these grants that help people to be self-sustained, to go to school at no cost to them, to receive monies and one-on-one help with everything they need under the sun when it comes to workforce development at no cost to them, because the grants come from taxpayer dollars. And that's what I've been doing my entire life for the last 15, 16 years ever since. Fast forward to today. As you and I talked about a little bit before we got started here today, I unfortunately witnessed several environments where these government dollars were not being used as they were intended. Being a man of faith, I couldn't have any part of that. So I moved around. And then ultimately, over the years, I learned to master a way of having success and working with underprivileged brothers and sisters, so that we can achieve success in spite of what the systems were doing. And I ultimately created a nonprofit as of November of last year, and that's what we're looking to do. Serve people right here in Wisconsin, in the southeast region of Wisconsin, being Kenosha, Racine, and Milwaukee, and then some of the other smaller suburbs. But hopefully, I'll get back to Chicago at some point. So we'll see.
You know, what you just said really resonated with me. I was having a discussion today with a woman that I mentor, and she's in a business because she saw that there was a need, she thought, for this business. However, it doesn't really speak to what her passion is.
Mm,
And so, what I like what you did was you had you went into that office, a government agency, and they didn't treat you well. But then you went around the corner to another agency where you found a job. But but then what you did was you took time to reflect on, but now how can I make a difference and how can I be impactful? And you searched within yourself and you saw what your area is that you should follow, what your call to duty is, like you just said earlier. What is your
absolutely.
duty? And you saw your calling as going in and helping with workforce development, helping people find those avenues and the resources to pursue the careers or jobs or whatever they want to do, instead of just taking no and saying, oh, well, I'll just find something else. You really followed your passion. So, what I'm saying here is that we have to learn how to really dwell within ourselves
Mm,
to understand where it is that we need to be going. Don't just
I
settle
love
for
that.
something because you say that there's a need somewhere. There is a need, don't get me wrong, but the need that you're satisfying really speaks to your gift and talent, not what someone else might have, but what you have that can add value to the world. And it might be someone else out there. There are other people who are doing workforce development as well. But the key is that you're sticking to what's true to your nature. And that's what people need to find, what's true to them, and then follow it.
I love that. Staying in our lane, right?
Yes.
Um, there's so much that really hit me as you were speaking, and the immediate thing that comes to mind is, if I'm trying to, what I found right away is when I was trying to do the things that I thought were the common thing to do, what the end trends were. I usually failed. Almost always, I failed because it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what he made me to do. Um, in our nonprofit, which by the way is called aXcess Incorporated, we have a very intentional process that we use to help people identify their calling. What are
Mm-hmm.
they made to do? And it's really based on looking back to go forward. So it's no magic we perform or any of that. It's not some religious ritual or some trick or scheme, anything of that nature. It's looking back at what they've done intentionally, and we map out a process to help them identify how to make money off of that. Which employers are actually doing that based on what they're doing today. And then we create an on-ramp for them to connect with them.
So give the name of your company again, and if there's a website that people can go to, mention it now. I mean, I think what you just said is so profound, is that you have to connect the dots. And if you don't do that, then what you're going to do is just spin around in circles, wasting time, energy, and resources instead of going in the path that you're supposed to go in. So tell us, how can they contact you, Dr. Gregory?
The name of our company is aXcess Incorporated, and it's aXcess spelled a little differently. So everything's lowercase except for the X, and that's very intentional. We did that, and we believe that the X is us. We're the X factor, right? So everything else is inferior as it relates to matching what he's created us to be. So www.aXcess, aXcess Incorporated, all spelled out, incorporated.com. So we have a website that's up and running. We're doing free initial consultations. We're doing pro bono workshops just to get our name out here. And we are a nonprofit, so it's not about the money. It's about us giving back. And this is how we keep what we have, by giving it away, because it was so freely given to us. Just really quickly, I remember so many people that touched my life on the south side of Chicago, spared my life. I wouldn't be here today without them. I may never see them again, but I can help someone else. And that's why I'm here.
Right. It's reaching back and then helping those, raising those up to be, I always say, be better than me. You can be so much better than me. But one thing that I have to ask you, because we had this conversation, and it's about the little foxes. Explain to me tell me about the little foxes.
Absolutely. So the Little Foxes is a love story in the Bible. The Song of Solomon is based on chapter 2. And it speaks specifically about the little foxes in chapter 2, verse 15. But in short, it's how I can relate it to real life is when you find that true love, that person, that's the one. And the things that we would go to protect it. And I'm going to fast forward to why that's so relevant now, and why I brought it up to speak on today as it relates to changing your view. We live in what I call a microwave society, where we can access information and get statistical data in just a few clicks of a mouse, right? That information is not always true. More often than not, it's not true, because it's all based on statistics. It's all based on numbers. So the number of people that go visit a site, for example, that's going to make that website rise up to the top in terms of its popularity. Doesn't make it true, just makes it popular. In our relationships, when we don't take time to protect our relationships, when we allow the things that we're seeing or we're exposing on social media, the things that we're telling others about, the intricate details, the things that we used to really protect years ago, now we're so freely putting it out there, and we're having so much dysfunction in our relationships today. We were created to be social beings. It's a natural thing to want a mate, to seek a mate. We're not taking the time to protect that mate. Once we find that special one, those little foxes will step in and they will destroy the fruits on that vine. Have you ever seen a fox? I'm sure we have, right? So big, profound animal. There's this really small, powerful cat that can just leap over big fences and everything and just climb into these trees, and they steal the grapes off the tree. So the Bible uses that reference that if we don't protect those that we love in the relationships and how we establish them, the little foxes would take away all the things that are good and destroy that love.
That's so profound. You said a couple of things that I really want to touch upon, and that's the fact that we don't do our research and that we don't want to find the answers. Those things right there strike to me. Right. But the other thing is that, and it leads into what you're saying, is that if we don't look for our own answers and we don't do the research, that's how the fox comes in and takes away what you have, because you're listening or just feeding into what someone else is telling you. But how can you trust that? How do you know it's honest? How do you know it's true? So you really have to seek within, and then ask the one who is above all to give you that wisdom and knowledge to make the right choice. Because like we said when we first started, it's all about the choices and decisions that we make. So you wake up and find yourself being without because you took the wrong path, allowing someone else to come in and steal your fruit that was for you.
They used to say to me when I was growing up, know your history, know your heritage. The families are so broken now, right? What is history? I had to break that down. I was one of those smart kids in school. So like history, I loved history, right? But when I got to Seattle, I met this Jewish family and they really taught me the game of life in terms of business and how to be successful. When you break down history, what is it? It's his story. So when we don't know our history, somebody else's idea of who we are becomes our story. So it's so critical to do our research, to be founded on facts.
Yes, you said a mouthful there, and I can't say enough. I am finding that there is a wealth of information if we just open up our minds instead of just taking what someone else is telling you at face value. Like you said, we have the internet. You can Google anything that you want and 1,000 things will pop up. But the other point is, like you raised, is that popularity. So people who go to a certain website will come to the top. So you have to learn how to scroll down. Don't take the first thing that pops up. And most of the time it's an ad that's a ploy anyway to just get you to buy something. It's a gimmick. So stop falling for the gimmicks and instead take that time to scroll down and go, it might be a little bit of work, but still, it is going to be rewarding because you're going to be like, dang, I didn't know that. And because we are allowing the media and other people to feed us what it is they want us to know instead of searching for what we need to know.
I love that. And we have to be able to test what is being told to us, to don't just believe what we're hearing or seeing, to test it. Just because it worked for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for us. It doesn't make it untrue necessarily. It just doesn't mean that it's for us. And we can become discouraged if we see something work for someone else and then we go and do the same thing and we get a different result. And I just don't want our brothers and sisters to lose hope in terms of seeking to identify or change their view or change their path when they don't have that instant success. As the old saying goes, anything worth having, you have to work for it. But you know what? That hard work will make you protected. Once you achieve it, you're not going to let it slip away so easy.
And you raise an interesting word, work. That 4-letter word. People, when people hear the word work, they think, I'm not doing that. I don't have the time for that. So let's talk about that, because when someone says to me, I had a conversation with someone and they said to me, I don't have time for that. That's work. However, you are in control of your time and your effort. So we get bogged down. I might be in the middle. I'm a writer. So when I get to writing, when I'm starting to write, my phone might ring or whatever, I'm not going to answer it because I'm dedicated to doing the task that I'm doing right now. We have to learn how to control our time, not allow others to control our time. So let's speak about that work and how we need to be all in to whatever we're doing. And what's your philosophy on work?
Being all into what we're doing. I love that, how you share that and how you phrase that. Because if I take the time to do something, then that's work. And so I don't want to spend time on doing things that's not going to produce something of value. And so I'm very particular about what I choose to spend my time with. As I shared earlier, we all get the same amount of time in a day, in a week. What separates us one from another is what we do with that time. So as it relates to work, my value is that we were made in his image and that God was the first worker. So if I'm going to model someone in terms of their work, I'm going to model how he worked. He worked tirelessly, worked endlessly for 6 days, but he also knew enough in his infinite wisdom to rest. On that 7th day, he rested. Work changed. Let me digress. Before I jump into when work changed, the Bible says in Psalms 19 that God revealed himself by his work. When you meet somebody for the first time, what's one of the first things we ask them? What do you do?
Right. So true.
And because that's how we identify people, right?
Right, that's true. But we need to break out that barrier, and I'll talk about that if we can go back to it. But go ahead.
But it's such a really cliche phrase, and I do it, and I agree with you. I see value, and we need to get out of that theme. But that's what we do. That's how we associate people based on what they do. And because God revealed himself by his work. But what I really want to touch on is the fall of man, how work became work. In Genesis 3, it talks about when work became a curse because of sin. That sin that Adam did when he ate from the forbidden tree, right? And so work became a task, it became a burden, and that's why it has such a negative connotation with some people. It doesn't have to be. What we teach within aXcess Incorporated is, one, we help people identify what's natural and true to them as it relates to work and what employers are working in those arenas so that they can go and work somewhere where work isn't work. Whole other subject. But something else I wanted to touch on for your listening audience is not everybody can work. Some of us have disabilities. Some of us have things going on that really limit the work we can do, but yet we still have the right to be able to provide for ourselves. What we do at aXcess Incorporated is we connect people up to funding sources, okay? We're not talking free money. We're talking about utilizing their existing situations to identify how paid. There's ways to survive outside of just sitting, waiting for a handout. We're not giving hand-ups because that's what we deserve. That's how I view work.
You said so many impactful things there. One I loved is how you make work not work. And by you doing that is getting into your zone, your genius zone. And when you're working in your genius zone, that means that you will not even be concerned with the time, because the time will whiz by, and you will also be at peace and you'll have joy. And those things, you can't beat those things. And that's what we need to understand. And there's so many employers that don't get that though. They try to put Willie into a peg to say, Willie, now you're going to do all these widgets here, but that might not be your calling. And people need to understand that if we just would play up to the strengths on our team members, instead of just putting them where they are weakest, instead play up to where they're at strength and where they can add value, then we could be so much more productive and efficient. And that's what's going on out here, is that we're not really taking that time to understand the people that are working with us. We're just dictating. And that's why I think, I was having this discussion with someone else, that's why we had that mass exodus after the COVID-19. People were like, well, wait a minute. I wasn't happy coming here anyway. And I could go somewhere else and work and do what I truly want to do. I'm out. See you later, right? That's what they said. I see you later. I'm not coming back. And so, and you have a degree in transformational leadership, which I would like to touch on, because if people just would understand that we have to break out that box saying that it's only one way and there's many ways. There is more than one way to do something. And you have to not get stuck in saying you have to work here 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Why not have flex schedules? Why not have people being able to telework and they set their own hours? As long as the work is getting done, that's the point. And the productivity is going through the roof, what difference does it make? Playing to people's strengths. So you're talking about, and that's how we cannot make work too. If you play to people's strengths and you give them what they want, then they'll give you what.
A happy employee is a productive employee. Absolutely. Transformational leadership. In short, helping others embrace change. We've done it our entire lives. Just a very intentional way, a structured process to help people achieve change. And it's all driven by the individual. And because if I'm helping or asking someone to do something hard, because change is hard. Let's just keep it real. Change is hard.
Yeah.
You're gonna quit, right? If I'm asking you to do something hard and you're really not into it, then I'm asking you because I think it's a value, but you don't see it a value. When it gets hard, you're gonna dip. You're gonna be gone. But if I'm asking you to do something hard based on what you want, that I've utilized my professional and my academic expertise to help guide you to a path that's achievable, then when things get hard, you roll up your sleeve and say, hey, Willie, I ran into this. What do we do now? And then I'm gonna roll up my sleeves with you and we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna get it done. But that's when work becomes not work, because it's about the individual, as you shared earlier. It's about identifying what it is that's important to you as opposed to just creating a bunch of widgets. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you have to do what I call the survival job so that you can get to what's important, what's natural and altruistic to you. But at the same time, you don't get stuck there.
Exactly. And that's what I think happens to a lot of us. We get comfortable.
Absolutely.
And we allow ourselves to get stuck. And you have to keep that mindset. What are you feeding yourself in terms of mentally, spiritually? What are you feeding yourself to keep yourself motivated to not get stuck and settle instead to keep striving for becoming better and greater.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I thank you for your time today. Do you have a parting thought or a quote or something that you want to leave our audience with that can help that person who has listened to you today, and how can they change their perspective and change their view? One, I know I would call you and help and take that assessment if I'm doing something that I know I don't enjoy. The first step is to find out what it is that I need to be doing so that I can take the steps to get to what I really enjoy. But what is a thought you want to leave us with?
I want to share a parting thought in that, again, going back to the gurus or the families, they're not gurus, I should say, because they were my Jewish family in Seattle when I got there, that introduced me to workforce development. What they taught me is the importance of mentorship, right? If you want to do something, identify the person that's doing it and doing it well, and then figure out how to barter with them. Don't go to them with your hand out asking, hey, teach me. I see you did it. Show me. No. Go to them and say, hey, if you teach me this, I'll give this to you. Or I'll show you this. Barter, because we all have something to offer. But the whole moral of the story is to not think you're going to become a subject matter expert on your own. Remember, we're social beings. Identify the ones that are doing what you want to achieve and figure out how to connect, as I did with you. Thank you for what you do, my sister.
That was powerful. Thank you so much for being here with me today. And I'm going to have you back. So this is not your one and done. You will be back because there's many more things for us to talk about, I know. So I thank you. And I'll see everyone again on the next segment of Change Your View with H.S. Jackson.
This concludes this episode of Change Your View. Let this conversation help you navigate life's challenges, emerging from that seemingly endless pause that you are experiencing. Regain command of your own path and resist being boxed in. Visit hsjackson.com for more inspiring and eye-opening discussions. Stop walking in the shadows of other individuals. No longer allow inferior perspectives to brainwash you. Do not be forgotten. You have the authority and power over you. Make the most of your abilities. Thank you for listening. Until next time.